So should be live now. Okay, awesome. So yeah, I think my first guest on the Bootstrap MBA don't need any introduction. You're the king of side projects if you want, and you're really one of the people I'm looking up to. So I learned really a lot by just your one series about making a side project. And yeah, welcome to my little show.
Oh no, thanks for having me on. I'm excited to talk to you. And I mean, I mean, honestly, it does always surprise me when people say they like follow me and they and they read all my stuff. And so yeah, it's very flattering, but it's also very surprising as well.
Still after so many years, because you're like active, I would say, in the maker community for how many years, right? 5, 10, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's the funny thing. I started making things on the side when it really wasn't, it wasn't cool and it wasn't hip and stuff. I started doing this stuff like back in 2001. And so that was when I did my first kind of side project. But I mean, seriously and actively, I guess, probably since about 2015 was really when I really started to do I just put a lot of effort into making side projects and kind of working on things like that. So it's been a good 5 years or so.
And yeah, what I'm curious about is why you decided to start this recent podcast tour, if you want, right? Because you made the announcement that you now want to appear a bit more on podcasts. And yeah. How did that happen?
I mean, honestly, I did this about a year ago. I just built Pod Hunt about a year ago. I just launched it, and I was trying to figure out, okay, how do I promote Pod Hunt? And so Pod Hunt, if you don't know it, is just it's like a product hunt kind of thing, but specifically for podcasts instead. So you submit a specific episode of a podcast, and people upload it, and it's just got like a daily leaderboard. But I was trying to use that as a way to promote Pod Hunt and stuff. But it was actually a lot of fun. People asked me a lot of questions about how I make things, and so it got to this point, and I was like, oh, I remembered last year I was doing a lot of podcast recording and stuff, and I was having a lot of fun. And so this year I was just like, well, why not? Let's try it again. And so, I mean, this year I am also, working on this kind of 1 hour SaaS thing as well. And so that's, it's just another interesting thing to kind of talk about as well. But yeah, I just had a lot of fun doing it last year. So I thought, let's try it again this year as well.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I listened to your appearance on the In the Haircut podcast, so your second appearance, and there you talked about Pod Hunt. The motivation was that Product Hunt podcast was shut down, right? And
yes,
you decided to revive it. And yeah, it's a great idea. Yeah. And it's a problem I'm having myself all the time, right? Discovering great content.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and it's it made sense for Product Hunt to sort of shut it down. It didn't really fit in with what they were trying to do in terms of what the sort of bigger vision was for sort of applications and kind of focusing on software and everything like that. And for somebody like me who just listened to a lot of podcasts and wanted to find really cool podcasts to kind of listen to as well, and it didn't take a lot of effort to kind of build the functionality, because it's all pretty standard functionality now in terms of just being able to submit something, being able to upload something is all pretty established functionality that there's patterns that kind of exist that kind of make all of that stuff easy. And so it didn't take a lot of work to kind of write Pod Hunt at first. It takes a lot more effort to kind of maintain it and to keep people active on it and kind of do all of that kind of stuff. But it's been a fun project that, as I said, is like over a year old now. Still kicking on, and hopefully it will carry on as well.
What I'm curious about is that you've built so many products over the years, right? It's like above 90 now, but it's not your main job, right? It's not what you're doing for a living. You still have a regular job at the moment, at least, right?
Yeah. So over the last 20 years, I've worked at various startups, and more recently, I was working at just like an agency kind of work where we used to make a lot of websites and things like that. And just, recently I actually, I've left that as well, and working full time now on Founder Path with Nathan hacker as well. So so that's my full-time thing, and then all these other things are just things I like to do on the side.
Yeah, I saw that. The Area 17 was the name, right?
Yes.
And
Yes, that's the agency. Okay.
Is that a joke for on Area 51? Because 51
No.
divided by 3 is 17? I don't know.
I don't think so. No, it's actually so Area 17 is the area of the brain. So I guess when you talk to like neurologists and stuff, um they separate the different sections of the brain based on the things that section of the brain actually handles in terms of function and stuff. So area 17 is the area of the brain that processes like visual images and kind of helps people understand what those images actually mean. And so area 17 was just a term that, or was a name that the founders of the agency set up, that just because they wanted to focus on the websites and visuals and kind of helping people understand what they were seeing and things like that. So that's kind of where the sort of name, that's where the name Area 17 came from.
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense than my interpretation, to be honest.
Well, it's good to know. Maybe that's why some people stayed away from it. They're like, we don't have alien stuff to work on here.
So yeah, I definitely want to talk about your collaboration with Nathan Latka in a few minutes or a bit later.
Sure.
Because I wasn't aware that this is your main gig now. I thought this was just another like side project for you. And I think on your website it still says that you're working on Area 17. I checked. So.
I've been too busy. I haven't updated my website yet. But no, so yeah, I mean, obviously we can talk about it a little bit, but yeah, it was a side project. And then after a while, we just kind of decided that we were gonna work on it full time instead. So that's another interesting thing that, side projects turn into your main thing as well, occasionally as well.
Yeah, that's the goal, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. And so, but the first thing I really want to dive in a little bit is like product development, because I think this is maybe your biggest strength, right? Because as you mentioned, you have so much experience and you are really able to build a site like Pot Hunt, I don't know, in a weekend if you want, or so, where someone like me, like beginner, would need a month or two, or I don't know how long. So, but the cool thing is, of course, that you wrote this long series about making a side project, and there really almost all my questions were answered. So I don't think we need to repeat that, and anyone who is interested in can just read your articles. But just one thing I really liked about it is that that when you start learning about these kind of things, then you read lots of stuff about test-driven development, wireframing, writing user stories, and you get so confused and you really think, oh shit, I still have to learn all these kind of things. And yeah, I don't know. But in your series, it's really clear that this is not necessary, right? You're not doing it, at least for your side projects. These I don't know, good principles, or however you would call them.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, obviously, if you come with that kind of experience and that kind of history in terms of how you built things in the past, if you have the skills to do all of that kind of stuff, it's fantastic. You should leverage that as much as you can. But when you're just getting started and you just want to build something quick for yourself, or or for a friend or whatever it is, or even if you want to build a business that you want to launch and have other people pay you for and all that kind of stuff, the quicker you can get to market, the quicker you can see if the thing works and people actually want the thing that you built. And so, I tend to focus on, yeah, it'd be nice to do test-driven development, but you're sort of at that early stage, you're just trying so many different things. You're seeing if this works or if this is the right way to handle a problem, that doing something like test-driven development really just slows you down, because not only do you have to write the software and change what you're doing with the software, you have to go update all the tests and make sure all the tests pass and do all that kind of stuff as well. And, and like I said, in some cases that's fine, because if you've got lots of experience with kind of working that way, then absolutely you should kind of stick with it. For me, I mean, I do, and just so you know, I mean, like when we do work, when I was at my agency and and doing my agency work and even other places that I worked at, we did a lot of test-driven development. So I've got lots of experience with that. And I know that it makes me take twice as long to do anything because I have to write the code and I have to write the test as well. And then every time I change something, I got to fix the code and then I got to go fix the test as well. So I know that, I know there's a good reason for it, but I also know that there's a good reason not to do it as well. And so, with kind of a lot of these things, it's nice to have. And if you've got a big company that's servicing lots of users, and if you want to do test-driven development, it makes a lot of sense because you'll be very confident that when you push out your, when you push out your new version or your fix or whatever, that it's actually not going to make things worse. But also, if you're just launching something and you don't, you have a handful of people coming to your website, if there's a bug or two, I think people almost expect you to have a bug or two when you're kind of starting out as well. So, as long as you're still doing the testing, that's the other thing I find, right? Like, I'm still doing the testing. I'm just doing it as I'm, I make the fix, I code to the website, I try and do the thing that I'm trying to do. So I'm doing testing. I'm just not doing automated testing. I'm not doing something that's easily reproducible, but I know my software works. And even if you're doing test-driven development, you're still going to do that as well, right? Like you're going to write the test to kind of make sure things work. But ultimately, that's just the software telling you that what it did worked. You still have to go to the website and make sure that the thing actually looks and functions the way that you were expecting as well. So you're still having to do that anyway. You just have a little bit more confidence that everything under the hood is kind of working the way that it's supposed to as well. But so just like I said, for me and for lots of other people too, test-driven development in the right circumstances, when you have the right time, when you have the right specifications as well, is really helpful. But for people like us who like to move really fast and try lots of different things and build lots of different things, it's not so helpful.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. But it's just as a beginner, right? You just don't know that you are allowed to do stuff like that. It's really like that. It's the tiny things that I'm pretty sure once you have lots of experience, you just forget, right? It's the curse of knowledge. So you just forget that people have this kind of problem. But at least for me, it's true. So you have the picture that you really have to plan the program that you want to develop in advance and do user stories. I don't know why, but it's what I at least noticed for my first little project is I can just do the stuff, right? I can just build it as I go along, and it turns out okay, right? And
and also and also I always find that most people doing side projects and stuff are doing it on their own, right? Like it's just you in front of your laptop or your computer just working, right? So where a lot of those things come in really helpful, like having test-driven development and having user stories and wireframes and stuff, is when you want to share that information and talk about that with other people so that everybody gets on the same page and everybody understands how things work and how things are supposed to look and stuff. But when it's just why are you going to create this document when you've got all that information in your head? All you're doing is taking that information from your head, putting it into a document so you can share it with other people to make sure that they have the same information in their head as well. But it's just you. So you can skip all of that stuff because you already have the information. You don't need to transfer it from your head to a paper to get it back into your head again.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. And just a last question, because really everything else is answered in your article series, but has anything changed? Because the series is like 3 years old, and for example, you're still using Laravel primarily, right?
Yes, I'm still using Laravel, and that comes out with new versions and stuff fairly regularly. So I mean, obviously some of the specifics have changed in terms of how to build things, but yeah, I still use Laravel PHP to kind of do almost all of my side projects. The front end stuff's changed a little bit. So recently, so I was using Vue and sometimes even just vanilla JavaScript just to do some interactions and stuff on the front end stuff. I'm kind of a big fan of the new tool stack, which is Tailwind, Alpine, Laravel, Livewire, and Laravel. There's a website called toolstack.dev that kind of talks about that stack a little bit. So yeah, I've been using that a little bit more just as a complete way of kind of building more kind of interactive applications.
Yeah, I've never heard of it, to be honest. So I never heard of the tool stack, but sounds cool because I love Tailwind. It's amazing. I played around with Alpine JS, and also Laravel is somewhat similar to Rails, right? It's not it's not that big of difference. So yeah, I will have to check it out. Sounds really
Yeah,
cool.
I mean, it's in terms of, I mean, I think I also that's the other thing I tell people as well. Like, if you're doing a side project, there's no reason to learn anything new. I mean, unless you don't know how to write code, or if you never built kind of web applications in the past. But if you're used to using JavaScript, if you're used to using ASP, if you're used to using Python, if you're used to using Rails, just use it, right? Like, when you're building your MVP, your first version, there's very little reason normally, right? Obviously, if you're doing something very specific and you're like, okay, to do this mathematical formula stuff, or this financial analysis, or this machine learning stuff, okay, well, maybe you want to use Python for a lot of that stuff, right? But generally speaking, if you're building a web, if you're building a SaaS app, and it's just, it's some forms where you're collecting information and you're turning around and you're saving that somewhere and then you're showing the information, nobody cares, right? Like, if you're using PHP or Rails or Python or whatever, nobody cares. So if you have experience with a specific stack and you're comfortable using that stack, just stick with it. You don't have to learn something new just to build it's kind of a normal SaaS application.
Absolutely. So, but just for me, because I started learning, so you have to make a choice, and this can be difficult because there isn't a perfect answer, right? So it's really a matter of taste, and even then, it's not clear. For example, between Laravel and Rails. So I don't know.
No, yeah, and that really is. You just have to try. I mean, I've used Rails, I've used Node.js, I've used Python. I've used ASP in the past as well. Like, and it's just a personal feeling in terms of the way that Rails works is the way that I like to write code. So I stick with it, right? Like, I mean, I've used Rails in the past and it's fantastic as well. The sort of problem I ran into with kind of Rails wasn't so much that how do you build the application in the first place, but how do you deploy the application? Where do you deploy the application? And, back then, at least, your options for that were much more limited versus with a PHP application. There's, 1,000,001 places that you can host, sort of applications with as well. So that's the other consideration to kind of have in mind is it's nice to have, the sort of latest shiny thing in terms of frameworks and things to kind of build with, but you also have to think about, okay, but once I take it off my local machine, I want to put it up on the server somewhere, how's that kind of work as well? And like I said, with PHP and Laravel, you just had lots of options from that end of things as well.
Yeah, this is something I I just learned, to be honest, because I started using Rails and everyone is just using Heroku, right?
Yeah.
But it's super expensive, right?
It is.
And what you see is that so many projects are built with Heroku and Rails, but they are all dead, right? After half a year or so, because you have to pay like $7 a month at least at the minimum to just keep things running. And for many projects, that's not viable because it's just a fun little thing. And this is why so many projects are dead quickly.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing with, I mean, obviously, I mean, yeah, at some point you have to pay something to kind of maintain servers, but I can, on a $5 droplet on DigitalOcean, run 5 or 10 different projects for that one price, right? Because especially if there's no traffic, if there's no significant traffic coming in, because it was an experiment that you tried and you didn't find an audience for it, and now you're like, okay, well, let me try something new. You're not having to pay $7 for the second application as well. Like, you could pay the one price and keep the old project kind of live as well and try something new kind of at the same time. So yes, in terms of scaling, in terms of costs, longer term, if you build something and it becomes popular, yeah, I mean, it doesn't, if you're paying $7 on Heroku, it probably doesn't have that kind of effect on you. But if you're still like that learning phase, trying to experiment, trying to make lots of things just so you can see how things work and kind of how things how things operate, it can be somewhat off-putting that I'm going to have to spend $50 just to kind of maintain all of these sites that really aren't going to make any money longer term.
Yeah, this is really what I learned. And if I would start again, I would probably pick Laravel just exactly for this reason, because I wasn't aware of that. And I think there are options like Heroku that you can host yourself, but I haven't really looked into it, and I still need to
And that's just something else that you have to learn as well, right? Like in terms of how do I now I've got to go set up this whole like deployment thing and kind of figure out how all of that stuff works. And so yeah, so it's again it comes back to like, you know, try and do as little as you can so that you can launch and kind of run and kind of get projects out there as fast as you can without having to learn new things and specialized software like that, right? Like, I mean, it's one thing to learn how to write code because it's something that will, you know, you can kind of apply across the board and stuff. But kind of in a lot of those cases, you're kind of having to learn very specific DevOps kind of software that's very specific to what you're doing that isn't really going to apply to anything else as well. So sometimes it's a good skill to learn so that you have it for the future as well. But you also have to think about, you know, am I using my time wisely? Because if it's a side project, especially, I don't have a lot of time. I'd rather be working on my application than trying to figure out how to deploy and scale my application instead.
Yeah, what I've discovered for myself is like just using static sites for as much as I can and deploying them to Netlify or Wurzel.
Yeah.
And because it's super stable, super secure, costs nothing, has like all the security configuration, SSL certificate, and yeah, it's just amazing. So,
yeah.
And at least for my little project and also my next project, I will just stick to it because it costs nothing and it's super secure. Big fan, I mean, something I discovered for myself.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it depends on what you're working on, if that works in terms of, you know, in terms of static sites and stuff. But even if you're just like, I want to put up a landing page to see if people like this idea or not, right? You know, why build why use WordPress or something like that? We have to pay to host it and maintain it. If you can build a very simple static website and have that hosted without having to pay anything for it, absolutely, yeah, you should absolutely run with that, especially if you're still working on it, right? Like, you know, for the first 6 months or whatever, while you're still working on the application, having something up so that people can sign up for a mailing list or whatever kind of makes a lot of sense too, because then once you're at the point where you actually want to launch, hopefully you have a mailing list, you have some people who are kind of already interested in the thing that you're working on as well.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy that stuff like WordPress got so popular, at least in my opinion, because it's like a total overkill for like 90% of all applications. Because just to like host a blog, you can just do, at least what I'm currently using is Jekyll. So because it's also Ruby, and it's also static, and you can host it for free on GitHub, and it can't be hacked, and you don't have to worry about backups like you have WordPress. It's so simple, and it's such a beautiful solution.
Well, it's a great something for us in terms of people who know how to code or want to learn how to code. The main reason that WordPress got really popular was that a lot of the hosts out there had like these one-click installs. You could just sign up for the hosting and say, I want to install WordPress, and then you just go find a theme and you install the theme, and now you can just within WordPress, within the editor, you can change the colors, and you can add content and stuff like that. So for people who couldn't write code or didn't want to learn to write code, something like WordPress just made that super easy. Like, you didn't have to have any technical skills whatsoever, and you could have a site up and running in a few minutes. Now, it was very insecure and couldn't scale, and you had to make sure that you upgraded WordPress frequently and all the plugins that you use frequently, otherwise you were going to get hacked and stuff. But also, you know, like I said, it didn't require any technical skills, and for a lot of people, that was the options that they had kind of at the time.
Yeah, which is crazy, because I think there are much simpler solutions even for these kind of requirements. Like, you worked on Statamic, right?
Yes,
for a while, and I'm not sure, but it's also flat file, right? So you're not having to deal.
Yeah, that was actually one of the reasons that we built. That was why we built Statamic at the time, was we were really tired of now, because it wasn't just about installing WordPress, but now you got to install plugins to, you know, do caching and stuff so that it could scale and things like that. And then it was always like, yeah, but really all we're doing is building a simple site. Like, why does it even need MySQL? You know, like, why do we even need that? Yep. And so, yeah, so that was one of the reasons that we kind of originally started that as like an alternative CMS out there as well. And yeah, I mean, like I said, I mean, I understand. I mean, obviously the world's changed a lot over the last 5 or 10 years in terms of even things like Webflow and sort of Squarespace, and so all these offerings that are kind of popped up that allow people to do things without having to write any code as well. You know, again, part of the reason was that because WordPress got really popular, people saw that there was a need for something like this in terms of People, people want to be able to build things really quickly and easily and fast, but they don't have the sort of skills in terms of how to write HTML and sort of that kind of stuff. And now that now that people have, people saw the need with WordPress, and they're like, okay, there's kind of alternative ways that we can make this really easy without having to worry about all the security and kind of scaling issues as well.
Yeah, and it's absolutely fantastic that this is happening, to be honest, in particular since this new WordPress editor, this Gutenberg. So absolutely horrible. So yeah, not a fan. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is I want to ask you about is product ideation, right? Because this is a topic I've just looked into and read a lot, and of course I'm super interested in your opinion. But again, you covered a lot of ground in your article series, so I will not bore you with questions you've already answered. But just one observation I had when I had a look at your projects and the different ideas you put out there in your article series is that you seem, if I had to describe your approach, I would say excitement driven. So you're not the kind of guy who does like market research or looks for, I don't know, trend, or how should I say, monetizable trends. Right. Yeah. But it really seems excitement driven. So is that a fair description of your ideation process?
Enthusiasm, maybe not excitement, but yeah, okay. I mean, I think, but no, I mean, like my situation, like I said, as we talked about earlier, is I've always had a full-time job. I've always been pretty happy doing what I am doing. So the reason that I'm building side projects isn't the same as some other people, right? Like, so for some other people, it's like, I hate my job. I don't want to be doing this anymore. I want to build something on the side, and then I want it to be my thing. And so I think if you're building with that in mind, then yeah, understanding what the market is and doing market research and understanding if there is a user base who will pay you every month, enough people that will pay you a salary over the space of a year, to kind of use your software, absolutely makes a lot of sense to be able to kind of understand if that market exists and if there's a need for the thing that you're trying to build. Now, even in some cases, I still think that that's the wrong approach, because just because there's a market there for it doesn't mean that you're the right person to build that software. Just because there's a trend, to build websites for dentists or to build websites for lawyers or websites for accountants, there's plenty of accountants paying people, thousands of dollars to build their website for them. Doesn't mean I'm the right person to go build a website for a lawyer or an accountant or whatever. So I think that's why I think, I kind of keep in mind what the excitement, what the enthusiasm about the idea is as well, because especially if you're doing it on the side, especially if you're doing it on weekends and evenings, if you come home after having worked 8-10 hours a day for your job, and then it's like, oh, now I got to do another 2 or 3 hours to build this thing. If it's something that you're not excited about, if it's something that you're not enthusiastic about, it's going to be really hard to make you stand up off the couch where you're chilling out, relaxing, watching TV, and to go work again. So if you're not excited, if you're not enthusiastic about the thing, about the idea that you have that you want to explore and see if you can build something for, it's really not going to happen, right? So that to me has always been a really important factor in terms of which ideas. Yeah, I have lots of ideas, and a lot of them I just leave. I just let them sit, and I don't do anything with them, because I'm like, it's a cool idea. I see people making lots of money with this thing. I could make my own little version of this, or I could tweak it. But I'm like, I don't really want to do that. Even right now, for example, I see that there's lots of people making lots of money with like scraping software. Like if you want to go scrape content from the web, I look on indie hackers and stuff, and there's like a ton of projects out there that are making a lot of money doing web scraping. I'm like, that's the last thing I want to work on. Like, I don't want to sit there writing software to go analyze HTML so I can extract little bits of information out of a page. I'm like, I can do it. I've had to do that stuff in the past, and I know it's not exciting for me. It's not exciting for other people. It might be very exciting. And so, I'm like, I could build a scraping software, it's not really rocket science or anything like that, but I'm just not excited about it.
So yeah, it's something I'm excited about.
So perfect.
but I will not write I'm not writing any scraping tool, but I'm doing a lot of scraping myself just for my projects. So in terms of doing like data analysis, because I'm analyzing different products, and it's just a tool for myself.
And I think that's very specific need, and you have very specific requirements, and you're excited about the information that you're scraping out of it. So you still have that excitement about it, but you're not building like a general tool that allows other people to go scrape that stuff as well. So yeah, like I said, that to me has always been like, because I mean, I think there's this idea about product market fit in terms of, is the product and the market, is there a market for the product, and kind of what's the fit like and stuff like that. And I think there's the sort of other part of that is the maker product fit as well, right? Just because there is an opportunity to build a piece of software, just to build a product, but who's the right maker to kind of make that, not just from an excitement standpoint, from the product standpoint as well, but also, do you have access to the people who will use that as well? So I could build software for real estate agents and things like that, but do I want to go talk to real estate agents to real estate agents every day? No, I don't want to do that. I mean, I'm sure they're very nice people, and I bought a house in the past, and I don't think I want to speak to real estate agents every day. And I wouldn't even know. I mean, obviously, I know where they hang out. There's kind of agencies and things, or there's kind of associations and things that you can reach out to kind of find out, to kind of share more information and stuff. But it's just, again, it's just not something I want to do. I don't want to talk to real estate agents every day as well.
Makes perfect sense, yeah. And you mentioned that there is a difference between like most of your projects, which were just built for fun, right? So they were, on most of your projects, there's no monetization at all, not even ads, right? And between just for fun projects and projects which have some monetization aspect, right? So I'm curious how you would go about it. Because I understand, of course, just being enthusiastic and having a cool idea and building it over a weekend is, of course, a valid approach. I've just done it myself. But I'm curious how you would go about building a side project that earns some money. So not millions, but just some money. So what are your thoughts on some kind of process, at least?
Yeah, no, and it's actually something I'm trying to do right now. I mean, it's with the 1 hour SaaS thing that I'm doing. I mean, the whole idea with that was to build a SaaS application, but not just build a SaaS application, but actually build a SaaS business instead. And so so I mean, I think with, like I said, with that, you kind of have to start with the premise that what I'm building, it has to be worthy of somebody willing to pay money for it. And so you really have to like kind of reframe your approach. I still think you have to be thinking about, is this something I want to build? Is this something I'm excited about? Is this something I know, how to reach the people who might want to actually use this stuff. So I think, all of that stuff that we just talked about still applies. And it in some ways is even more important right now. Like if I'm just building something for fun, then I don't really care if there's a market for it. I don't really care if there's an audience for it, and I can reach that audience as well. With something that you're trying to do, more seriously and more long term as well. I think you definitely have to pay attention to all of that kind of stuff as well. And I think, for me, the easy way has always been, I've been a big fan of building in the public, building in the open as well. I think that to me has always been a really good way to try and attract the users that I want while I'm still working on stuff as well. So with this whole 1 hour SaaS thing, being able to talk about what I'm building as I'm trying to work on it, I think naturally just kind of gets people interested and people excited, hopefully, about what you're working on. So so building in the open has been something that's worked really well. One, it just kind of helps you make sure that you're building the right thing, but then also just helps you with the market. Because I think, as developers and things like that, we like to make things, but we're not very good at the sales and the marketing side of things as well. And so if you wait till you finished your product and then start marketing, one, it just takes really a long time. Now you spend a few weeks, months, whatever, making something, and now you got to spend a few weeks, months actually doing the marketing and sales and stuff like that. But if you're building in public, then you're kind of doing everything at the same time. So the sort of time to market becomes maybe a little bit longer because you're doing more than one thing at a time, but you're also doing a lot more in terms of advancing the business aspect of kind of what you're working on as well.
Yeah, building in public, I think, is a awesome strategy for indie makers, right? Because the most successful people, at least, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, but the most successful makers that are visible are doing it, right?
Yeah.
Of course, maybe everyone else is in stealth mode, I don't know. But nevertheless, it's great to see that lots of people are doing it and it's working, and it's super helpful for people like me who are just learning. And yeah, I'm learning so much by watching people. And one of the things I love the most is like these live streams where people just stream the whole process. I think it's super amazing, because you really get to see all the little details which are usually overlooked because of the curse of knowledge, right? So
yeah, and I think it's also helpful to see that it's not like a straight line, right? Like I don't like sit down and think about what I'm going to write and just straight line to the end of it. It's a winding road where it's like, well, try this didn't work, now I got to go search on Google to see why this isn't working. And I think people expect that even with people like myself who've been doing this for the last 20 years, we're still learning things, we're still figuring this stuff out, and it you kind of a lot of the times you're building something new that you haven't worked on in the past. So sort of the best skill that you can have is not 20 years worth of history of experience in terms of all the code that you've written, but it's like, I've hit a bug. Now, what's the right way to solve that bug? Like, what's the right things to search for? What's the right things to kind of look at? Where do I look at in the log files to find why there's an error here? Like, just understanding the process people have for like figuring out what's working and what isn't working is way more helpful, I think, than here's a specific solution to a specific issue that you're having.
Yeah, I think the term is implicit knowledge or so. So at least I read something about it, super interesting, because it's the kind of knowledge you can't really teach usually.
Yeah.
You can only learn it by observing and spending time with people who are able to do it. And I think live streams are something I really like, because this is exactly where you can grasp these kinds of finer issues. And and another, or maybe the last question in terms of product ideation, is that I noticed that lots of your projects are very focused on trends, right? Because just a few examples here. Podcasting, of course, is a huge trend, but also your COVID, will my job give me COVID? Will robots take my job? Zoom backgrounds, how I spent my stimulus, Medium top authors, back when Medium was a big thing. Maybe it still is, but and also lots of crypto stuff and chatbots when they were a big thing, right? And so is this something you do consciously, or is it just a byproduct of your enthusiasm-driven ideation?
I think it's the enthusiasm thing more than anything else. Like it just happened to me, when the crypto I mean, that's still a thing, obviously, but I was very excited about learning more about Bitcoin and Ethereum and stuff like that. So so you build things in that space so that you can learn more about that space. But for me, the best way to learn is to make something, and so that's usually where it comes out. And I did the same thing with chatbots when they first came out. I spent a lot of time building stuff. I spent a lot of time building chatbots, and we ended up building Botlist as well. And then with podcasting, like I said, I'm excited to be on podcasts. I listen to a lot of podcasts as well, so it just kind of made sense to build the kind of tool that I was looking for that kind of wasn't out there as well. So I was very excited and very enthusiastic about that, about the podcasting industry kind of as a whole. So to be able to be involved in it and to build in it. So I'm not looking for trends that I'm not excited about. Like I'm not gonna go build a website about taxation because there's a big tax bill coming out. I'm not doing stuff that I'm not excited about, but it's stuff that I want to learn about and stuff that I'm that I think might be exciting to kind of look at and kind of get under the hood about as well.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. So of course there are lots of people who are doing this kind of strategy on purpose, right? They subscribe to like the Trends newsletter from the Hustle, which costs like $300 a year, super expensive, just because they want to hop on the next hype train. And of course, I think there's nothing wrong with this approach, because everything is easier when you're riding a wave, right? So
yeah, and I think it also depends on what you're trying to do, right? Like, I mean, like I said, for me, you know, like I said, this has been stuff I do as, you know, for the most part, at least, it's been stuff I do for my hobbies and stuff that I'm interested in. It's not something that I'm like, I've got to earn my next paycheck with this stuff. So if there's a trend that you can hop onto and you can ride the wave of that trend, yeah, it's absolutely much easier to, you know, to just kind of earn your next paycheck out of that. I was already earning my next paycheck, so I didn't have to worry about that. And so then I can kind of stick to, okay, what's the thing that, you know, once I worked for 8 hours a day earning the paycheck, what's the thing that I want to do that's fun and exciting, kind of after that as well.
That makes a lot of sense. And do you have some kind of prediction still about the next kind of trend you're seeing? So because of course podcasting maybe already decline, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I've noticed that a lot of people have mentioned that the amount of time they spend listening to podcast has declined. And of course it has a lot to do with the Corona, with the COVID stuff, because people are not commuting anymore.
Yeah.
All these kind of stuff, but
No. So I still think longer term there's still a trend, and not necessarily podcasting specific. I think that's a very specific term, but just in terms of audio and people recording audio and listening to audio, I think it's still in many ways still in its kind of infancy. I think it's really just a transition of radio and TV into kind of demand stuff, rather than having to watch the news at at 6 o'clock or having to watch it in front of a TV. You know, just being able to like just listen to just listen to the news on your iPhone whenever you want to, I think is, that kind of thing. So that, I think that trend will continue. And I think it's going to, now that the sort of larger players are involved with that, I think it's going to, if you, I don't know, obviously you're over in Europe, but over here in the US, for example, like CNN and MSNBC, which are, so the big news channels, all of the anchors now have podcasts where they put out episodes every day about whatever the sort of topic of the day is, or the thing that they want to talk about, and you can listen to that whenever you want to. You don't have to wait till 6 o'clock in the night just to watch that specific thing. So it's very much becoming more mainstream, and so I think that trend will continue. I mean, obviously we're not in the early phase anymore. It's becoming a lot more established and stuff. And I think there was, when coronavirus first hit, there was a decline in the amount of time that people were spending listening to podcasts. I think that part of that had to do with, people weren't in the car or on the train or whatever to trying to get to their job, which is where they would normally listen to podcasts. And so, people, you kind of have to make the conscious effort to actually, there's a podcast I want to listen to. It wasn't just automatic that you just hopped in the car or you hopped on the train and you're like, okay, I'm going to turn the podcast player on now. But now I think people have come back to it a little bit now, and they're like, okay, there was that podcast that I really enjoyed listening to, so I'm going to make some time to actually sit down and listen to it while I'm cooking or cleaning instead. So still doing that, kind of using that time wisely, where I was wasting time in the car. Now I'm now I've got to clean the house. I might as well listen to a podcast while I do that. So I think that's kind of an interesting thing as well that people did. It wasn't just the fact that it was easy and convenient. People found that they actually enjoyed it, and now they're kind of trying to find the time to kind of stick with that as well. So I think that's kind of an interesting thing as well. I think, in terms of trends, I think obviously coronavirus has accelerated a few trends. And so I think it's very interesting to see, just the whole remote collaboration space has existed for a really long time. People have been trying to do, kind of trying to move meetings online and things like that. And people, I think there was a human resistance to that. There's not too many technical reasons why it wouldn't work, but there was this feeling that people wanted to be in the same room. They wanted to be able to see people that they were talking to, in like, they wanted to be in the same physical space. And obviously with coronavirus, you can't enforce that anymore. People can't be in the same space. So I think, even though it's existed for a while as a kind of industry and things, I think the sort of acceleration now that you'll see in terms of online collaboration tools and a lot of the remote working tools, I think you're going to see a massive explosion in that over the next. I mean, it's basically already started since the coronavirus hit, but I think for the next few years you'll continue to see that. I think that is probably the biggest trend that we'll see over the next few years at least.
Yeah, seems like a safe bet.
Yeah, like I said, it's not really anything new. Like WebRTC and those kind of tools have existed for a really long time. And I think the sort of reasons that it hasn't really caught on wasn't a technical reason that they hadn't really caught on. All of these things are possible and have been possible for a while, but the sort of human opposition to it has now been wiped away. So it's going to be interesting to kind of see how people kind of expand and kind of explore that as well.
Definitely. And the next topic I have on my list here is that I want to talk a little bit about your projects in more detail, because so far we just talked about ideas, and I have a few of your projects on my list here, but also you created this huge list of all your projects, right? It's available yes. on iworkedon.com, right? And it's super interesting, and I think everyone should have this kind of list because it's so useful, and it's one of the big things that's missing, for example, on Product Hunt, that you can't see if a product is still live or what's the status, right? It's yes. really hard to tell. And you have different categories. Clearly, you've sold it, it's dead, you left the company, it's zombie mode, whatever that means. It's active. Yeah, it's really, really cool. And one thing I noticed is, so of course I would love to go through this. I really would love to go through this and talk about every single one of them, but there are just
too many.
too many, at least on your list. But I don't know if you have seen this, but what's his name? Josh Pickford, right?
Yes.
He has a super cool list also with all his projects. Yep. He has posted it as an Excel sheet, and it's just so helpful to see how many tries people have until they find the winner. Right, and in contrast to what you were doing, he tried to earn money from the start.
Yes.
So he really started from the completely different opposite end, because his first projects were, I think, no fun, just money. So it was these niche site affiliate kind of stuff, which you really, no one enjoys doing this. It's just you just do it for the money. But now, of course, I think he has found the sweet spot for him, and you are really coming from the opposite end, from the just fun end, and now also moving a bit towards the money, maybe, right? But I'm not sure if this is true, but this is at least what I heard, what I got from your last Indie Hacker episode, so that at least some in some more way monetization has entered your mind.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and also just because I think to some degree a lot of people who are following me are trying to do it because they want to build something real as well. So I mean, a lot of the things I've done in the past have been not just to build the thing, but also to share how I built the thing. And so a lot more people are interested in building things, that have the monetization aspect on it as well. So the fact that I'm now building those things and sharing how I'm building those things, I think is kind of helpful as well. Not to say that I don't count the sort of enthusiastic and the excitement for the idea. I still think that's still super important as well. But no, and absolutely, yeah. I mean, obviously, as I'm getting slightly older too, I'm trying to think about retirement and stuff, and I'm like, it'd be nice to have something that was making a bit of money too. It would be
nothing wrong with it. Yeah,
nothing wrong with that too. Just a quick little side story. So I'm not sure if you compared our lists or not, but you'll see. Actually, I'm not even sure I put it on my list, but there was a project that I built with Josh. I'm trying to remember when that was. I think it was in like 2000, maybe 2001-ish. If you look at his, what's it called? Fugitive Toys, Fugitive Toys list. I'm not sure if it's on my list at all anymore, but yeah, so I built the first version of Fugitive Toys with Josh. I think it was back in like 1999, I think. But yeah, so that was so we've worked on stuff in the. It's kind of a small world.
That's really cool. I wasn't aware, and really back in the days.
Yeah, a really long time ago.
Super cool. And this is also something I noticed and wanted to ask you about, is because you've worked with a lot of different makers over the years in terms of collaboration, or I don't know how to call it, but for example, with Ben Tossel, there's Louis Isenshaw, now Nathan Letka, of course. And I'm curious, so what kind of agreements or how this worked, because of course I also was thinking about this kind of thing, but then I was puzzled. Okay, how actually do you pull it off? Because it makes everything so much more complicated. Because of course, if then something takes off and becomes super popular, then what about the legal stuff? And I don't know, how do you really structure it? And I at least imagine that it's super complicated, and I'm really curious how you handle these kind of issues in the past.
Yeah. So I mean, again, I mean, it goes back to me like, I'm not, again, because I'm not really building something that, you know, needs to make money, that I need to earn money from. My approach to this has been very relaxed and very chill. And with kind of a few of those things too, the sort of reason was completely separate anyway. But yeah, so I've tended to be like, this is just a cool thing that I want to build, and if it turns into something, we'll figure that out afterwards. And so for example, when I worked with Ben on a few projects as well, you know, with him, he was working full time on those. So, you know, like, even if we started to make money on those, I was like, well, I've got a paycheck, so, you know, let's just take the money that the project is making, let's use that to pay your salary so that you can carry on working on it full time, kind of things like that, so that we can continue to grow and kind of advance what we were working on. Just with the understanding that, you know, that's just the way that it is, and if it ends up being something really massive at some point, we can figure that out at some point. It's not really a big deal. The thing with Hit and Shaft, for example, that one was a weird one where it was like, I think it was January one year. It was really cold. It was snowing outside. There was, like, you know, lots of snow outside already, lots of ice on the ground and everything like that. And I sent out a random tweet. I was like, who wants to pay to fly me out to California where it's nice and warm, so I don't have to be cold and stuck in the house in Eastern, you know, on the East Coast of New York? And him just reached out and he was like, I've got this thing that I'd love for you to build. You know, when can we fly you out, basically? And I was like, I was only joking. I wasn't being serious. You know, my family would not like me just to leave them here for a few weeks while I go work on stuff. But we just talked, and I was just like, I'd love to build something with you because you're an awesome guy, and I've been following you for a really long time. And so we just built something. It was just, again, it was just a fun thing. You know, some things I build because I want to make money. Some things I build because I want to work with people. Some things I build just because I'm excited about the idea and I want to build it. And so yeah, so that thing with Hit and Shaft, I mean, like, yeah, I didn't get a flight out to California or anything like that because I wasn't expecting it. I wasn't expecting anybody to be actually serious about it either. But yeah, but it ended up being something cool that I got to build, and, you know, I got to put on the resume to say I built something with him as well. So it's like I said, I've been less concerned about the whole legal stuff because it's like, well, if it turns into something, it turns into something. And in some cases it has. Like when we built Q with my friends Dan and Matt, you know, they're running Q now. You know, they've been running it for a number of years. There's 6 or 7 people that work at Q. You know, it's making good money. It's paying salaries and stuff like that. I still own a percentage of Q as well. So, you know, it's kind of worked out. And it was just something that we didn't really have a formal agreement for. It was like, let's just try build this thing, and if it turns into something, we can figure out, you know, afterwards, you know, based on who's working on it full time, who's not working on it full time, you know, who's taking salary, who's not taking a salary, you know, sort of those kind of things that you just, you know, as long as everybody's reasonable and has a fair approach to, you know, in terms of, like you're saying, how much effort are you putting in, how much do you expect to kind of see at you know, from the output as well. So yeah, and part of that is just understanding who you're working with as well, right? If you have a relationship with people that you're making stuff with, starting small on a small project that you're not spending, you know, 6 months a year on, if you're spending a few weeks on it instead, you know, even if things don't work out exactly how you hoped, it's only a few weeks worth of work, right? Like it's not been your life's work to build this one thing, and then, you know, then it doesn't work out. Then it doesn't work out. But if you spend a few weeks on it, it's not a big deal. If you spend months on it, it becomes a big deal at that point.
Yeah, most people are nice and reasonable, right? So
yeah,
it's really great to hear that it always worked out like this. So it just started without any kind of formal agreement and just figured it out along the way, and everyone So everyone was always happy. So there were never any conflicts, fights. I don't know, because I can imagine that this quickly happens.
No, I mean, I think, like I said, you just have to be honest and upfront with people. Like, I mean, I was always honest with people. I'm like, I've got a job, right? Like, I mean, so I'm probably not going to come work at this thing because there's no way that this startup thing that we just started is going to pay me the kind of salary that I need to support my family and everything like that. So I was always very open with people to say, if this thing takes off, I can carry on working on it part time. You know, I can put a few hours in here or there. But if you would need a full-time person working on this, it's not going to be me. So I think as long as you're open with people and say, look, I know you can't afford to pay me my salary that I'm making now, and I can't afford to leave my salary right now because I have to support my family. I think as long as you're open and kind of honest with people with kind of what you're expecting and what kind of everybody else is expecting as well, I think it works out fine. It's always, if you're like, well, I want to come, I want to be a full co-founder of this thing, but I can't work on it, full time. It's like, well, if the other people are quitting their jobs and are going to spending all their time working on it, then you have to make some adjustments in terms of what your expectations are as well. So I think, as long as you're open and kind of honest about what the amount of work is that you're going to do and what the amount of work is that they're going to put in, and if people are going to put in cash or not cash, if people are going to put in time. It's understanding not everybody. It's nice to think about just splitting things equally and stuff, but if you're not doing equal amounts of work, you shouldn't expect to get equal amounts of kind of ownership and kind of stuff like that either.
Yeah, it's super interesting. And I also had what's the story behind Q on my list. I wanted, because it really stuck out, because it was one of the things you were listed as a maker, but then you left and it's still a company. So I was curious. I mean,
the very high level story there was just, Dan and Matt came to me with an idea. I thought it was a good idea. I didn't have the time to work on it at the time. And then I think it was like 6 months later, basically I told Dan and Matt, like, I'd love to work on this. I don't have the time right now. You should go try and find somebody else to kind of work on it. And 6 months later, I kind of I just had some spare time. And so I love that idea. Have you found somebody to work on it? They're like, no, we haven't. So I spent basically like 2 weeks working on like the first version of that. And they basically used that first version to get the first 5,000 people in the door to kind of use the software. They went out and raised some seed capital to kind of run the company. And then so I was involved with it for a while in terms of just, again, it was just like I can put in like a few hours a week kind of thing. Worked on that for a while with them until they got it to the point where they could just go and hire like a full-time developer as well, based on the MRR that they had kind of at the time and stuff like that. And so they're doing really well. I think that's probably 4 years old now. Q, I think, is about 4 years old. So it's kind of it's just been awesome to kind of see how they've been able to scale that out.
Yeah, really, really great to hear. And you still own a part of it, so you're still getting some.
So hopefully at some point there'll be an exit.
That's the dream. Okay, yeah, because I noticed that when they first launched, they got almost no attention, at least on Product Hunt, like only 50 votes or so. And then the second version, I don't know, different launches got then lots of attention.
Yeah, and I think that's the natural way too, right? Like, I mean, people don't know who you are, people don't know what your offering is, and so once people learn about you and become users and stuff, I mean, that was and also I think we became more well known as well, kind of as we were working on it as well. So it kind of helped just in terms of just having an audience as well, just to make sure that we kind of ranked higher up on the homepage as well and stuff like that too. So it was a nice journey to kind of see the sort of evolution of just having that spark of an idea. We didn't know if people were going to like the idea. I thought it was a really awesome idea, and so did Dan and Matt, obviously. And so it's just been awesome to see that the market has kind of proven that it's a good idea as well.
Yeah, perfect success story. So at least until now, really, really cool. Yeah. And another project that stuck out for me is Marketing Stack. because totally crazy. So because there are of course always these kind of trends on product hunt, and during a short period of time, a specific type of product gets all the upvotes all the time. And that was of course, what was it called? Startup Stash or so, which is still
Stash is the first one. Yep.
The most upvoted product on Product Hunt, which is completely crazy because it's so simple, and it was sold, I don't know, for quite some money. And I then also saw that your marketing
stack, I think it's called.
Stack,
Marketing stack.
Not Stash. Stack. Okay. Got like 6,000 upvotes, completely crazy. And it's really just a prettified Excel file.
Pretty much.
No offense. So because I read the story that Ben, who just collected like 150 links in an Excel file, and then told you and asked you, maybe let's make it pretty, and this is what you did, and completely crazy. And you ended up selling it, right?
Yes. Yeah. And it's funny because the site's not up anymore. I think it's so. I find that amazing that people spend money to buy stuff and then they just ignore it. It's like if you get. I mean, I guess if you have the money, then that's fantastic for you.
Do whatever you want, but
it just seems a strange way to spend your monny.
But at least you can redirect it to some other page in order to get the SEO juice, right? So, SEO juice. So that was a fun. That was another one of those fun. I think that was one of those ones that, Ben was trying lots of different experiments to see what was, kind of what would work, what is, and he's more on the marketing side of things anyway. So it kind of made sense for him to kind of collect all those things. It was one of those things where it's like, I've got most of these links already because it's sites that I visit all the time, and it's things that I do kind of all the time anyway. So just collecting them into a spreadsheet. And then he sent me a spreadsheet. I just wrote a little script to import them all and kind of organize them in different categories and things like that. And we just built a very simple page that just kind of listed them all and allowed people to filter into the different categories and kind of things like that. And it was, I think at launch we got like 2,000 upvotes. And then it's just been on the site for a really long time, obviously. So it's continued to get upvotes ever since that as well. So, it was number one on the day, I think, and sort of all sorts of stuff like that. But that was, like I said, that's mostly just Ben doing the marketing side of things, making sure that there was a lot of excitement about that, because obviously, like you said, it's a very simple site. It's really, really crazy because there are lots of stories of people like spending 6 months building some super complicated tool, and then I don't know, crickets, nothing, right? And you slash together a simple Excel sheet, and it gets all the attention and even sold, so to make some profit, not just having some fun. Super awesome, But I don't know, what would you say? Was it just luck, or was it really Ben pushing the marketing so hard?
I mean, part of it is just understanding what people are looking for, right? Like I get and also how many people are looking for it too, right? So you could build a very complicated, very specific thing, and if your audience is like 6 people around the world, then you're going to get 6 upvotes, right? Like, but if you're building something for the marketing industry, there's millions and millions of people who want to know marketing, want to do marketing, have to do marketing, and so so there's just some tools I think that are just naturally going to do much better on sites like Product Hunt, just because of kind of what they are and the kind of audience that Product Hunt has and the kind of product that you have. So that's why I love Product Hunt. I've been on it for a really long time. I've launched lots of things on it as well, but I think you have to understand what you're building and is that the right audience for it. And so, don't put all of your hopes and dreams on, I'm going to build something and launch it on Product Hunt and it's going to do amazingly, because, if you're building something for rocket scientists, I'm pretty sure there's not too many rocket scientists hanging out on Product Hunt, so.
Maybe Hacker News is better.
Maybe Hacker News is better for that one. So, just understand, what you're building and who you're building it for. And then, understanding where they hang out is obviously really important as well. That's why, obviously, Startup Stash did really well on Product Hunt, because it's people building startups. That's kind of the whole point of Product Hunt. So if Startup Stash didn't do well on Product Hunt, it wouldn't have done well anywhere. So I think you have to kind of understand that as well.
Yeah, it's also something, of course, I observed, and this is why, at least for my first 3 projects, I want to focus on this niche, because maybe it's not the smartest strategy in terms, if you look at the whole picture, but at least it's so easy to reach these kind of people because they hang out on Product Hunt. they are willing to try new stuff, and you get
Right.
feedback, you can connect with people. So just building stuff for the maker community like you did is, I think, a great strategy, but you need to understand that if you want to build, I don't know, something for doctors, I don't know, then
and like,
it's just a wrong channel.
Yeah, and like I said, there's lots of places that you can launch, other things as well. So, yes, it's important to have like a launch strategy about where you're going to launch things and how you're going to launch things and stuff. But, just because everybody else is launching on Product Hunt doesn't mean that you have to as well.
And yeah, Ben also was like the perfect person to work with because he has the perfect insider knowledge, right? Because he worked at Product Hunt, he was responsible for the page. And for the front page. And also you did another project with him, which is Newco, right? What's it called? Yes. And this morphed into his
into what he's doing now.
MakerPad, right? So
yes.
And this is also like a incredible success, right? So at least from what I'm gathering. He's doing
he's doing amazingly well. It's doing amazingly well. So Newco was it was just an extension of kind of what he was doing. So after he left Product Hunt, he was just trying to help people make stuff, right? Like, people who couldn't code kind of all the time, didn't know how to code. And obviously the market's changed a little bit underneath us in terms of the whole no-code market really exploded as well. But so he was just trying to help people, like they've got an idea, they want to be able to launch it. So the whole idea was Newco was like, how do we get people from, I don't know how to code, I don't have any experience, I don't necessarily even want to learn how to code, but I want to build a marketing page or landing page or something like that, or I want to build something that doesn't necessarily require any code. Can you show me with the different tools that are out there, with the web flows of the world, with the Pubble of those kind of things? Can we start building things without necessarily having to know how to code? So he started doing that on his own. Just I think it was just like a few private pages somewhere, and he would just it was like a Notion site, I think, with some links on it to some videos that he'd recorded and kind of things like that. And so he kind of reached out to me and was like, hey, I'd like to scale this out a little bit more. Can we build something that that has like a full kind of CMS attached to it, so that we can manage this stuff and we can control who has access to all the different things and kind of stuff like that. So we spent probably about 6 months or so building that and trying to figure out how we scale that out. And then in the end, what we found was like, really, it was like, just as we were building that was when the no code movement really started to explode. And so we were like, well, so Ben really, sat down for a while and we kind of talked about it. And he was like, it kind of makes sense to do this thing as a completely no code kind of thing, just because the sort of tools that had come out had actually allowed him to do a lot of the things that he wanted to be able to do as well now, without having to write something custom and stuff. And so and I was cool with it. I mean, I was like, let's take what we did at Newco, and as much as you can, let's see if you can launch it on MakerPad, but do it without any code whatsoever. And we'll kind of see what the market says in terms of, are they interested in stuff? Because like part of the problem that we ran into was that just to write all of the tutorials and documentation and stuff was really time consuming. And it was something that we couldn't quite figure out how to scale easily, just because it required more people to write the tutorials, and we obviously needed to pay them, and so all sorts of stuff like that. And then when Ben switched to MakerPad, it kind of just so happened that a lot of the no code players were out there. They were busy working on the actual tool itself, and they were looking for people to kind of help with the marketing of it. So in many cases, they came to us and said, or they came to Ben rather and said, well, we'll pay you to write the tutorial if you post it on your site and you share it. And so it kind of solved that problem, because it was now we have a way to monetize it without having to go and find people to pay for this stuff as well. So the early part of that was like trying to figure out how to scale the two sides of things, it just became a lot easier. And then Ben, like I said, he just focused on doing it all without any code and stuff like that. And I think it's worked out really well for him. So that's really awesome.
Yeah, it's another great example where riding a wave was just the perfect strategy, because he positioned himself, then the big wave came, and now everyone is coming. So this is really
and I think the sort of important thing there is that, you know, he didn't just wait for the wave either. I think that's the thing. Right? I think a lot of people, like, they want to wait for the wave, or they want to see the wave and then they want to hop on at the right time and stuff. I think, you know, what Ben had done, he'd kind of established himself in the space already. And then the wave just kind of came and lifted him along, right? Like, so it wasn't like he just like jumped in at the last minute and kind of rode the wave up to the top. He was sitting there in that space waiting for the wave. So I think that's the thing I think people forget, is that you can't expect to see the wave and then hop on it at the same time. You kind of have to put your stake in the ground and say, like, this is where I think the wave is going to come. And when it comes, you have to be there and you have to be ready for it as well. I think that's you know, that's what Ben had done, in that he really established himself as an expert in the code space and in that particular movement. And when that movement really exploded, you know, it did carry him along. But if he hadn't already been an established player in that space, it would have carried somebody else instead. So he did a lot of the work to kind of establish himself in that space way before it was cool and kind of hip and trendy and stuff. And so I think that's the other thing that I think that people forget, is that yes, it's luck that, you know, you happen to be riding a wave, but it's also hard work in terms of doing a lot of things that, you know, aren't that you're not seeing that immediate return for, with the expectation that hopefully at some point you will see that return. But it's not always luck. It's some people do put in a lot of hard work and put in a lot of effort to make sure that what looks like it's luck.
Yeah, you have to be prepared, right? Of course, I think luck always plays a role. Like, you can't deny that. So, but
well, yeah, I mean, he made the educated choice about, I think this is a movement that will happen, and, you know, I can be here for it. But, you know, in a different world, if COVID hits at a different time or something like that, maybe not. You know, like, I mean, like, because there's just so many other bigger factors or bigger things that can happen that can change what the world looks like, that you know, you can't control all of those things, but you make that educated guess about where you think the world's headed, and hopefully it will arrive there. But you know, the world is the world, and it will do whatever it wants to in the end.
Yeah, and he was, I think, only able to do that because he was seriously enthusiastic about this, right? Because he built so many products just using no code before.
Yes, exactly.
He found like the winning thing, which was just make a pad. And this is again the strategy you mentioned, right? Being enthusiastic, not just looking for trends, and because
I mean, I think if you're looking for trends, the problem with looking for trends is that by the time you see the trends, it's too late. you can't join the trend at that point. I mean, unless it's a really, really, really long trend and you're just hopping on early. But I mean, I found over the years that trends are getting shorter as well, right? Like the peaks and valleys and stuff happen a lot faster these days, just because of the way that everybody's connected and you know, sort of online all the time and stuff. So to spot a trend, hop on it and ride it all the way to the top, you know, you have to, that's real luck to, you know, just to kind of find the right trend and hop on at the right time. But if you're already, you know, if you're already excited about something, you're already working in that space, and so you don't have to spot the trend, the sort of trend finds you almost. So I think that's the other thing that I think, you know, people think it's easy to kind of spot the trend and just hop onto it, but it's by the time you've spotted the trend, by the time you see the excitement and stuff, there's other people who are already very established in that space already. So for you to kind of hop on, you can probably hop on and make a small amount of money, but you're not going to make like a really big successful thing. I don't think.
And another collaboration, of course, I have on my list here is the recent one with Nathan. And I'm really curious because he mentioned himself that he's very transactional in his relationships. So these are really his words. So I'm really curious. at least if you can share that, what kind of agreement you have in place. So are you employed? Are you a co-owner? What kind of structure?
Yeah, so this is another one that just started out, just we didn't have any agreement whatsoever, right? Like it was just one of these things where it's like, oh, Nathan seems like a cool guy. I think I'd like to see what it's like to work with him. So so we came up, we kind of talked about an idea that he had, and so I was like, sounds like fun. Let's see if we can make something here. And so we just launched, kind of a fun little side project called operationpi.com. But yeah, so we had no long-term agreement, no plan about working on anything long-term. And actually it's funny because after we built Operation Pi, after about 6 months or so, I actually had a conversation with Nathan. I was like, Nathan, it's really fun. It's been fun working with you. I really enjoyed working with you, but I just don't think I have the time to kind of work on anything anymore. I've got other things happening. And he basically sat down and was like, no, Mubs, I want to work with you longer term. Let's figure out how we kind of make this work. Just because I was working on other things and stuff at the time. So yeah, so we kind of figured that out. So in terms of founder path, I have a percentage of that, and also taking a salary now as well. But there was no formal agreement and stuff. And we just sat down and had the conversation in terms of what would it look like if we started doing this thing kind of whole time, and we talked it through based on how many hours people are putting in and how much money they're putting in and sort of other things like that. And it's all very specific to your situation and the sort of project that you're doing and the people that you're working with. So there's no like magic formula here in terms of it's never going to be an equal, everybody's just going to split the company equally, and because it depends on kind of how you're working and kind of what you're working on and what capital you need to kind of fund that kind of operation and stuff like that. It's all very specific, but just sit down and have an honest and frank conversation about what you need, and if you can work it out, it works out, and if not, there's I say there was obviously the world is what it is for other people and stuff, but for me at least there's always been lots of opportunity because I do what I do, because I'm pretty good at what I do. I've never really had a point in my life where it's like, I don't know what I'm going to work on next, right? Like there's always been opportunities where it's people need people who can do what I do. Like, so, if it didn't work out with Nathan for whatever reason, in terms of we couldn't figure out the percentages of the money or whatever, I'm sure I would have got a job somewhere else, like it wasn't, like I'm very fortunate. I understand it's not the same for everybody else, but
you worked hard for it, so it's, I think, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I put in the effort. I've built a very good I've built very good relationships with people that I worked with in the past, and whenever I need work for whatever reason, I'm able to reach out to a few people, and I've been able to, I think I got laid. So not this previous job, even prior to Area 17, I got laid off from a job. Just because the company was just having some issues and stuff. I got laid off with a bunch of other people too. And within 48 hours, I had a new job lined up. It was just, I actually had like an offer within 48 hours. And that's, like I said, that's partly because people have worked with me in the past. They're very happy to kind of work with me in the future as well. So, so that's the other thing I like to keep in mind is, I don't burn bridges with people. I have very good relationships with people. And I think that's super important. I think people don't put enough emphasis on that as well. I do put in the extra effort. Like that's why people, like to work with me and would continue to like to work with you on new projects and kind of things like that too. So, and I don't think I'm unique in that sense. I think there's lots of other people out there like that too. But I think if people make a conscious effort to kind of do that as well, I think it's something that everybody can achieve. I think so. It's not something that just just because it's me, I'm able to do that. I think I think it's something that kind of everybody can kind of have that options out there as well.
Yeah, it's fantastic advice. That's really cool. And maybe the last question I have on the whole your project history is what you consider the biggest success out of your like 90 side projects. Because I know there are lots of factors. I know some projects got lots of press attention, like the robot thing or Botlist got super.
So there's a few, and it depends on your criteria, right? Like I think one of the earliest ones, even something like Statamic, which I built. I mean, that was one. So he doesn't live this far away anymore, but so I have a friend who used to live about a mile away from me, and so it was kind of fun to work on something with somebody who was close but not like in the same office. Even he was working from his house, I was working from my house. You know, I'd like drive over to his house, say here's the most recent code. We push it up to GitHub and stuff. We just kind of hang out and we kind of chat and sort of talk about the longer term vision of like what's a static flat file CMS look like. So things like that. So that was very cool. And it's very cool that it's still live right now. They just released version 3 of Statamic. He'd moved down to Florida right now, but so that's kind of cool. Q is also, really cool as well. There's like 6 or 7 people that work at Q now, still doing really well. Still never met Matt and Dan in person, which is another amazing thing. And I think, and then, in terms of like the biggest amount of press and publicity and stuff is actually that will robots take my job? I mean, that one, I think in the first month that it was live, had done 4 million page views. It was on MSNBC.com. It was on radio stations and TV stations around the country. It was on Canadian TV. It was on French TV. It was in a kiosk in a museum in San Francisco where they were doing an exhibit on the Industrial Revolution about how work has changed over the years. And they wanted to put wheel robots in a kiosk inside of the exhibit so that people could kind of look at what the potential future of work looked like as well, in terms of which jobs would be automated away and stuff like that too. So that one was kind of a wild ride in terms of it just blew up and it went just about everywhere that it could.
Yeah, absolutely amazing, because it's, again, a super simple tool, right? So I guess it wasn't a lot of work. And
no, I mean, we built that in 2 weekends. It was 2 weekends. It was probably about, in terms of actual time, probably about 20 hours work between me and Tipitar as well. Probably about 20 hours worth of work, and it just exploded.
Really great. And another cool story I came across is For Sale by Maker, right?
Yes.
Yes. You also ended up selling it in exchange for your computer that you're using right now, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that was what. So I built that. So Producton every year, about every year, has like a hackathon which they sponsor. And I think for this one, they had just released their new GraphQL API, and so they were encouraging people to build things with this new API that they had put out. And so I built For Sale by Maker, which accessed. So it's just a way for people to sell their projects that they don't want to work on anymore. And so I used the product and API as a way to kind of pull the information about the product. So, when you submit to Producton, you have to give it a name and a tagline, and you upload images and all that kind of stuff. And so I figured if somebody was trying to sell something, easy, just one click, you log in with Producton, we use the API to pull your products, and then we can pull all the information about that product. It made it really easy to build a page that had the information. You would put in how much you wanted to sell it for, how much traffic it was receiving, how much money it was making, sort of that kind of stuff. And within like 1 or 2 clicks, you could have your site listed. And it also made it a little bit easier if somebody was interested in purchasing the site, they could see how it had done, how it had done on the launch as well. Like how many upvotes did it get, sort of those kind of things as well. So I built the whole thing in probably 2 weeks or so, trying to learn their new API as well and trying to understand how it all worked and stuff. And then it sat for like a year. Like people were using it. People were posting their products. People were selling. I mean, I think I heard from about 5 or 6 people that said that they had posted their thing on For Sale by Maker, and somebody had reached out to them and they had actually sold their thing on it. and it was completely hands off. Like I didn't have to do anything. It was just something that people would just find because it was on Product Hunt, obviously, and it's had a fairly SEO friendly name as well in terms of people trying to sell their projects and things like that too. And then so about a year after I'd launched that, Andrew, who runs MicroAcquire, reached out, was like, I see that you built and launched this thing, and I see it's still live and people are still using it. Would you be interested in selling it? And I was like, yeah, but I don't know how to put a price on it, right? Like, because I haven't been trying to make money with it, so I don't know what the value of something like that is. And so I sat down for a while and thought about it. I was like, it'd be nice to have a new laptop. I haven't bought a new laptop in a while. And so I reached out back to Andrew and I was like, how about we look up how much a new Apple MacBook Pro is, and if you're okay with that, we'll sell it for the price of the Apple MacBook Pro. And he was like, oh, that sounds fair. and so in the space of a weekend, we kind of had that conversation, and I think it took about a week for me to transfer, kind of everything over and stuff. But yeah, so that's now owned by MicroAcquire. I think they just redirected it in sort of in the end instead.
Yeah, super cool story, and definitely a win-win, right? Because you were
because
money.
I wasn't doing anything with it, but it was a cool thing to build for the hackathon, and it was a cool new way to kind of explore their API and everything like that as well. So I kind of used the time effectively, and then it turned into a new laptop instead.
Not too bad. But so did they integrate it, or is it really just the domain?
I think it was just that they were looking for the backlinks, and also just to be able to do some publicity and kind of share the story as well. I think as well, and hopefully
sure.
It's worked out well for him as well.
It's a cheap price. It's like what Peter Levels does on Twitter, where he is
giving away almost exactly the same. Yeah, almost exactly the same. For the price of a laptop, they got some good publicity out of that as well.
Yeah, everyone wins. Nothing wrong with that. And is there any project where you were disappointed that it didn't work out? Because of course, most of them were just for fun, and I think you didn't really care about the outcome because the building was all the fun. But is there anything where you really were a bit disappointed?
I'm trying to think, actually. I haven't thought about that one in a while. Let me see. I'm going to look through my list real quick just to see what's on there. I don't know. I mean, like, cause I said, most of the ideas are just, kind of fun things that if they work out, great. If not, then it's not really a big deal. I mean, I will say some of the things in here, I think, this is something to keep in mind too. Oh, actually, I think the one that really still irks me a lot. So if this is like way back in 2015, if you look at Payy, Payy. So I built this with a friend of mine. I guess he lived in Florida at the time, but so we built this thing, and it was just a very simple thing. It was just like a web page that when you signed up, you got like a pay page, and so you could go to pay. It was payy.me, so it would be pay me, and then it would be / Mubashar Iqbal or whatever, right? So it was just a page which just had basically a form in it where you could put your credit card info in, and then you could just pay me whatever you owed me for whatever reason, right? Like, let's say we went to the movies and I bought the ticket, and I was like, well, just at some point down the road, you can pay me back, kind of thing, essentially. And so we built that, we launched, and it was actually doing quite well. So, people were using it just to send each other money and stuff, just, for things like paying rent and things like that. And then a few weeks after we launched it, we got an email from Stripe basically saying that you can't build that. We were like, what? We can't build that? And so Stripe made us shut that down, which was really annoying because it was actually doing quite well kind of at the time. But apparently at the time, I don't know if it's changed legally and stuff in terms of what Stripe's allowed to do, but you couldn't build just kind of a general purpose page that wasn't like selling something, because I guess sort of at the time, at least, when to transact through Stripe, it had to be for a specific thing. So if you were buying a piece of software, or if you were signing up for a monthly subscription or something like that, that was fine. Everything was kind of hunky-dory and everything was fine. But just having like a payment page where there wasn't like a specific reason for putting in your credit card info and, you know, purchasing a good or a service wasn't allowed back then. I have no idea if that's still the case right now or not. But yeah, that one I think is still the one that just kind of irks on me, because I didn't really see a good reason for why Stripe shut us down, but that's the way it is.
Yeah, probably regulations. I don't know, because payment regulations are wild, right? Because
I think at the time, Stripe was still fairly new at that point. They were still only a couple of years old. And so they were beholden to who was actually backing them from a financial institution side of things. So there was just certain things that they weren't allowed to do at the time. I think now that there's, you know, they're obviously much larger now and have a lot more control over what they're allowed to do. I think it probably would be okay now, but you know, back in 2015 at least, it wasn't something that the people that Stripe were partnering with weren't allowing Stripe to do it, because Stripe wasn't allowed to do it, and we weren't allowed to do it either.
Great. So I think we are almost out of time, so that you have just a bit more time before your next meeting, right? But just to wrap things up, I have two quick questions, and maybe the most important one is, in your opinion, who should I talk to after talking to you? So like, who are good persons to learn from in your opinion? And maybe not even in terms of talking to them, but just learning from them by studying what they do. That's equally fine.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think, not just you specifically, but just in general, I think just learning more about the no code space, I think is valuable for everybody, because even as a developer, there's plenty of times I just don't have the time or the energy to kind of make stuff from scratch, and just being able to use tools and things like that, I think is really an important way that people can kind of make things fast without having to spend lots of time on it. So obviously, you know, Karen, following people like Ben Tossell, Param Kanstein is another person who's very active in that no code space. I think it's Param K on Twitter. Yeah, very active in that community as well. So I would just encourage people to find people in the no code space to just to kind of follow and kind of learn lots from.
That's great advice. And in fact, the project I'm currently working on is a little bit no code. So it's not purely no code, but It's a little bit no code. And I was thinking about how to build it, and then it occurred to me, why don't I just use Airtable before I build some kind of super complicated backend, whatever, myself, because it has all the functionality that I currently need for, and just to validate whether there's real demand, I will use Airtable. And of course, if people really use it, then I can still level up, building
it out,
own thing. So
absolutely, it's all about building. And people say, like, Mubs, you build so quickly, you don't validate your idea. My building the thing is validating my idea, right? So that's how I validate ideas, is I build something, and if I can do it faster, if I can do it quicker, I can validate much quicker than even, you know, trying to have lots of interviews with people and trying to talk about the idea and trying to explain the idea and collect their feedback and analyze the results. It's much quicker to build it and launch it and see if people pay for it, and then that's your validation right there.
Yeah, I love that approach, and it's also what I'm trying, because of course you can talk to potential customers, you can try these kind of tricks where you just put up some landing page with a fake buy button, and then people click on it, and then comes the message, it's not available right now, but you can
right.
But all the messages you get, all the data you get this way is, I don't know, not really clear. And even especially by talking to people, though, because of course lots of people will say the idea is amazing, but then they don't end up paying. And
yeah, and it's also, you know, just because you talk to two people who say yes, maybe that's the only two people who would have ever said yes, right? Like, I mean, so just understand. I mean, and we're not statisticians and stuff, so understanding who you're speaking to and understanding how they represent the rest of the market and stuff, you know, that's a whole kind of industry unto itself.
It's a science,
yeah, and there's a whole science to that, and we're not experts in that. So yeah, just because we spoke to a couple of people who gave us really good feedback and stuff doesn't mean that we built something that's kind of worthwhile. And like I said, it depends on kind of what you're building. If it's going to take you 6 months to build something, then yeah, maybe you spend a week or two doing the sort of industry research and talking to people and seeing if it's worth spending 6 months. But if you can spend 2 or 3 weeks and just launch something and actually get it in front of real people at that point, real customers, then that's way more valuable than kind of doing that customer research instead.
Yeah, perfect. And I think that's all I had on my list. And yeah, thank you so much for coming on my still very little show. So I'm not sure if you know that, but so far it was just me rambling into the void, and I'm just documenting my process. And you are actually my first guest. But
that's cool.
I really want to have more guests because it's such a cool format just to learn from people, and also because just like you, I love listening to podcasts myself. So
yeah. I think we kind of all have to start. We all have to start somewhere, and I think I'm doing the whole 1 hour SaaS thing too, which is like every day I share like the sort of 10 minutes of what I did the day before, and it's kind of like a mini podcast, but it's just on the 10 minutes on YouTube instead. So I think it's really awesome way to kind of share, even if nobody else is kind of watching it. I think it's going to be fun in 6 months to a year or whatever, just to sit back and kind of rewatch all of those and just kind of see kind of how I worked and kind of how things worked out in the end as well, to see if I made any really bad choices along the way, if I made some really awesome choices as well. So hopefully it's kind of all there to kind of see how things worked out.
Awesome. Yeah. Perfect. So I really hope to speak to you soon again. And I will definitely follow your journey. So I'm really curious what your new project will turn into, like Founder Pass. So
yeah,
it looks as it could become a really big thing, right? So this is the dream.
That's the hope, and that's why we're kind of working on it full time now, is because we kind of see the potential there. If it was something we just thought wasn't going to be that big, then it would have carried on kind of as a side project. But I think it could be a new way of people to fund their SaaS businesses, instead of having to raise money from kind of like venture capital instead, and having to effectively sell part of their company. With FounderPath, we kind of help you raise capital without you having to give up any of your company. So it can still be yours, and you can run it how you want to. You don't have to worry about giving up seats on the board and all that kind of stuff. So hopefully it ends up being something that a lot of people can take advantage of.
I hope so. It's really cool. So speak to you soon. Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Thank you very much.